In our headlines on this Wednesday afternoon, January 10th, here in South Korea. Fresh tensions are brewing on the Korean peninsula as North Korean leader Kim Jongun claims he will not start a war in the region, but neither will he avoid an armed confrontation. Employment expanded for the third year in a row in 2023, albeit at a relatively slower pace, but South Korea's employment rate among people aged 15 and above hit over 62% last year, the highest in 6 decades. Curtains have gone up on this year's Consumer Electronics Show, where Korean conglomerates have adopted AI for comfort at home, for convenience on the road, and for sustainability in society. We start with fresh words of animosity, this time from North Korean leader Kim Jongun, targeted at South Korea, which he claims is most hostile to his regime. Our An Sung-jin covers his latest remarks.
North Korean leader Kim Jongun has said that Pyongyang has no intention of avoiding a war on the Korean peninsula. The North state-run Korean Central News Agency reported on Wednesday that Kim defined South Korea as a state most hostile towards the North during his visit to munitions factories earlier this week. Pyongyang's leader also pledged to step up military capabilities for self-defense, as he said peaceful reunification is impossible. This comes amid heightened tensions and North Korea's supplying of military equipment and munitions to Russia. Foreign ministers from nearly 50 countries, including South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, issued a joint statement opposing North Korea's arms transfer to Russia. The minister's statement reads that the North's export increases the suffering of the Ukrainian people, supports Russia's war of aggression, and undermines the global non-proliferation regime. It added that in return for the North's ballistic missiles, Moscow is providing key technical and military insights to Pyongyang. The statement strongly urged all UN member states to condemn North Korea and Russia's violations of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. U.S. National Security spokesperson John Kirby announced that following several dozen ballistic missile launches earlier, North Korean ballistic missiles were recently fired into Ukraine by Russia on Saturday.
Our information indicates that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea recently provided Russia with ballistic missile launchers and several ballistic missiles. This is a significant and concerning escalation in the DPRK's support for the Korean Peninsula and the Indo-Pacific region.
North Korea has been under a United Nations arms embargo since it first tested a nuclear bomb in 2006. The embargo prohibits the exports and imports of military weapons to and from the country. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Following intentions to render void the cross-border buffer zone, Seoul's defense authorities have announced plans to launch artillery drills of their own on land as well. Our defense correspondent Kim Jongun has details.
The South Korean military recently announced that the buffer zones set up along the inter-Korean border are no longer effective, following North Korea's continued artillery fire off its western coast. The buffer zones were set up in 2018 when the two Koreas signed an inter-Korean military agreement to halt hostilities near the border. First, on the ground, a 5-kilometer buffer zone was established in the north and south from the military demarcation line. Here, artillery fire and regimental or higher-level field maneuvers were suspended. In the maritime buffer zone at sea, all coastal and naval artillery as well as maritime exercises were banned. In the air, a no-fly zone banned aircraft from flying within 20 kilometers of the MDL in the western section of the demilitarized zone and within 40 kilometers of the zone in the east. For the first time in 6 years, South Korea last week conducted artillery drills within the maritime buffer zone in response to the North's artillery firing. The Defense Ministry on Tuesday revealed plans to resume artillery exercises in the buffer zone on land as well.
As you know, due to the September 19th military agreement, there were restrictions on large-scale regiment-level maneuver training and artillery fire training within 5 kilometers from the MDL. So there were some limitations in establishing a readiness posture in border areas with frontline units. I believe that such issues will be resolved and each unit will be able to train in better conditions.
However, when asked if the abolition of the buffer zone means the termination of the inter-Korean military pact, the ministry said this is an issue that requires necessary consultation between relevant ministries.
The Defense Ministry seems to be responding to North Korea's provocations, while the government is thinking there's no need for us to be the first to destroy the military pact, as it's already dead.
The expert added that it would be difficult for Pyongyang to pose a direct threat as long as the South Korean military remains on high alert. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
President Yoon has pledged to put in motion the construction of age-friendly cities in light of the country's aging population within his term in office. The pledge was shared earlier on Wednesday in Ilsan, one of the venues of such cities, and the location of the second forum on government policies with the public, this time on real estate matters. Speaking of which, apartments older than 3 decades will be exempt from safety reviews to allow for immediate reconstruction. President also spoke of scrapping punitive taxes on owners of multiple homes, asserting that the burden, in fact, was being shouldered by tenants. On the local political front, lawmakers across the aisle have voted in favor of a new space agency and a ban on dog meat. Our Nat'l Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hoo reports.
Lawmakers at the National Assembly's plenary session on Tuesday approved special bills that will establish South Korea's new space agency and that will ban dog meat consumption in the country. The special act for the establishment and operation of a new space agency passed with 263 approvals and 3 abstentions. The new space agency, which the Science Ministry has dubbed the Korea Aerospace Administration, or KASA, is expected to launch in Sacheon, Gyeongsang-namdo Province as early as this May. The agency will carry out research and development, policy making, industry promotion, international cooperation, and more in the field of aerospace. In response to the bill's approval, President Yoon Suk-yeol said South Korea has taken a great step toward becoming a major space power. Meanwhile, the so-called Dog Meat Ban Act passed with 208 approvals and 2 abstentions. It prohibits all processes of dog consumption, including the breeding, slaughtering, and selling of dogs. Punishment for slaughtering dogs for consumption will be up to 3 years in prison or a fine of up to around $23,000. For the breeding and selling of dogs for eating, offenders could face up to 2 years in prison or fines of up to around $15,000. There will be a grace period of 3 years to allow for related businesses to prepare for closure. The opposition, amid a PPP walkout, also unilaterally passed an act that calls for further investigation into the Itaewon crowd crush in 2022. The act supports the formation of a special investigation committee so that those responsible for the disaster can be penalized. The PPP opposed the bill, saying that this would incite political strife and held a rally in protest. Eyes are now on whether President Yoon Suk-yeol will exercise his right to veto the bill. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Global economic prospects remain dull, with the World Bank projecting growth this year will slow further to mark a 3rd year of weak expansion. Our Lee Seung-jae explains.
In its latest global economic prospects report released on Tuesday, the World Bank says global GDP is likely to grow 2.4% in 2024, slowing for a 3rd year in a row. The latest forecast follows 6.2% growth in 2021, 3% in 2022, and 2.6% in 2023. The World Bank cited poverty and debilitating debt levels in many developing countries for the latest forecast. It also said that excluding the pandemic contraction in 2020, growth this year is set to be the weakest since the global financial crisis of 2009. It also added that due to the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and ensuing spikes in inflation and interest rates around the world, the first half of the 2020s is expected to be the worst half-decade performance in 30 years. Speaking to reporters, World Bank Deputy Chief Economist Ian Coase said global growth for 2020 to 2024 period would be weaker than the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, the Asian financial crisis of the late 1990s, and downturns in the early 2000s. Moving forward, the World Bank expects global growth in 2025 to rise to 2.7%, marked down from a June forecast of 3% due to anticipated slowdowns among advanced economies. Major economies around the world are also expected to see their growth slow, with the U.S. forecast to grow 1.6%, down from 2.5% last year, while China is also expected to see growth slow 4.5%, down from 5.2% last year. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, on the local labour market, employment expanded for the third year in a row in 2023, albeit at a relatively slower pace amid fewer job openings in the manufacturing sector. But overall, Korea's employment rate among people aged 15 and above hit over 62% last year, the highest in 6 decades. Our Park Go-nu has more.
South Korea's latest employment figures have been published and are showing positive signs. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, a total of 327,000 jobs were added on year in 2023, which was actually a drop from the year before. But that was mainly due to the base effect, as the jobs market recovered in 2022 following the easing of COVID-19 restrictions. 816,000 jobs were added that year. The employment rate for those aged 15 and above in 2023 rose 0.5 percentage points compared to the year before, to 62.6%, a record high since data was first compiled in 1963. An official from Statistics Korea said reduced COVID-19 restrictions increased demand, including at cafes and restaurants, while the need for childcare workers after the pandemic helped to boost employment figures. By industry, sectors including the accommodation and food service sector saw jumps in employment of around 11,000 after COVID-19 measures were eased last year. But the manufacturing and wholesale and retail fields saw employment figures drop due to shrinking exports and more online transactions, respectively. Those aged 60 and above saw the biggest increase in job additions, with 366,000 added, while the number of people in that age group working passed 6 million for the first time last year.
More people aged 60 and above and higher demand for employees in that age group in the health and welfare industry are factors behind job additions in the age group.
She added that despite fewer additions for people in their 20s, the employment rate for young adults was quite high, considering population decline in that age group. Meanwhile, 285,000 jobs were added in December 2023 alone, a rebound from November when the on-month numbers fell. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
In other news, Korea's corporate heavyweights are in Las Vegas for this year's largest trade show where artificial intelligence is taking center stage. That being said, our business correspondent Shin Ha-young covers their product displays.
The world's largest annual tech show is back again. The 2024 edition of the Consumer Electronics Show, organized by the Consumer Technology Association in Las Vegas, commenced on Tuesday. As widely acknowledged, the key word of this year's CES is artificial intelligence integrated across a variety of industries.
With generative AI in the last year since it's come about, there's a lot of very rapid developments, companies going into new areas. It's like the internet itself. It's not just a technology, it's a fundamentally game-setting changing technology.
LG Electronics believes AI should bring better customer experience that is more caring.
We all know AI stands for artificial intelligence, but at LG, we would like to redefine it as affectionate intelligence.
With over 400 exhibitors showcasing their latest breakthroughs in vehicle technology, the spotlight at the trade show is on future mobility powered by AI. South Korea's Hyundai Motor Group is participating on its largest scale ever, with both Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors making a noteworthy return after being absent the previous year. Hyundai Motor highlighted its commitment to leading human-centric life innovations. To do so, the company introduced its hydrogen value chain solution covering production, storage, transportation, and utilization. It has also announced its software-defined everything strategy, aiming to establish a mobility ecosystem that caters to users' needs anytime and anywhere through advanced software and AI. With an aim to go beyond the traditional concept of automobiles, Kia Motors unveiled its Platform Beyond Vehicle, or PBV for short, which can be turned into a delivery vehicle or a private office based on users' needs. Meanwhile, South Korea's second-largest conglomerate SK Group built a theme park at CES to highlight how technology can be applied to improve the world and address global challenges such as achieving net zero. One of its affiliates, SK Hynix, showcased advanced memory solutions that support generative AI applications. The 4-day event will run until Friday local time, bringing a diverse array of changes driven by AI to be used in daily life. 신하영, Arirang News.
Over in the Middle East, Israel's counteroffensive against the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah has led to the death of the group's drone unit commander. Our Chesyang has the latest.
The Israel Defense Forces said on Tuesday that they killed a commander of the militant group Hezbollah's drone unit. IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari said they killed Ali Hussein Bruzi, who had led drone attacks on northern Israel. Hagari mentioned that the attack was a targeted drone strike on a vehicle by Israeli air forces. On Monday, a senior commander of Hezbollah's secretive Radwan force, Wazim al-Tawil, was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Meanwhile, International Organization for Migration reported on Tuesday that more than 76,000 residents in southern Lebanon have fled the area as the tensions are increasing between Hezbollah and Israel. UK newspaper The Guardian has reported that hundreds of refugees are arriving every day in Lebanon's southern coastal city of Tyre, with fears of a possible recurrence of the conflict between Israel and Lebanon in 2006. Amid the growing conflicts, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken is visiting the Middle East. In a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Blinken emphasized avoiding further civilian harm in Gaza. He also stated that the U.S. will stand with Israel, but called for aid to Gaza and fewer civilian losses.
This immense human toll is one of the many reasons that we continue to stand with Israel in ensuring that October 7th can never happen again. It's also why we're intensely focused on bringing the remaining hostages home, addressing the humanitarian crisis, and strengthening protection for civilians in Gaza, and preventing the conflict from spreading.
Blinken's visit to the Middle East is his fourth since the current conflict between Israel and Hamas militant group broke out in October. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Elsewhere, the private U.S. company that hoped to mark America's first moon mission in over 50 years is being forced to abort a lunar landing attempt in light of a crippling fuel leak. Our Yoon reports.
U.S. robotics firm Astrobotic has announced that its Peregrine lunar lander has no chance of a soft landing after a serious fuel leak about 7 hours after its launch. The moon mission was the first of its kind for a private U.S. company. But following its successful launch on Monday from Cape Canaveral, Florida, where the lunar lander successfully separated from the rocket, Astrobotic soon reported a propulsion system malfunction on the lander, which now has no hope left for success. Peregrine was attempting to become the first U.S. spacecraft to land on the moon since Apollo 17 in 1972. Meanwhile, NASA announced during a news conference on Tuesday that its Artemis program, which aims to return astronauts to the moon this decade, is facing some lengthy delays. The Artemis 3 mission to land humans on the moon for the first time since the Apollo program was previously set to complete this milestone by 2025. But it is now expected to not happen until at least September 2026. The space agency said that the primary reason for the delay includes 2 failed test flights in 2023. The tests in 2023 of Starship, which is the spacecraft that is expected to take astronauts from lunar orbits to the moon's south pole, both ended in explosions. Yoon, Arirang News.
The man suspected of fatally shooting a South Korean tourist in Guam last Thursday has been found dead. According to local news coverage, the suspect was found dead inside a parked car in the village of Jotna Tuesday night. He had a self-inflicted gunshot wound and a gun on him. Investigators have yet to confirm whether the gun was the same weapon used in last week's shooting in Tumon district. Meanwhile, the driver of the alleged getaway vehicle has also been taken into custody.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In Ecuador, outbreaks of violence in the country's largest city, Guayaquil, have led to a declaration of a 60-day state of emergency on Monday night local time. Police have also arrested gunmen who on Tuesday took over a local television station during a live broadcast. Guayaquil police confirmed 13 arrests of suspects involved in the hijacking of the Ecuadorian television station TC, where gunshots and yelling were shown on the live feed. President Daniel Noboa has also issued a decree declaring 22 gangs in Ecuador as terrorist organizations. This follows the escape from prison on Sunday of dozens of gang members, including Jose Adolfo Macias Villamar, the leader of Los Choneros criminal gang, also known as Fito. That escape unleashed a wave of violence across Ecuador, including the kidnapping of at least 4 police officers. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is undergoing treatment for prostate cancer. That's according to officials at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center on Tuesday, who said Austin was hospitalized on January 1st due to complications following prostate cancer surgery that took place on December 22nd. U.S. President Joe Biden was only notified on Tuesday morning of Austin's condition 3 days after he spoke with Austin on the phone. The Pentagon chief has been receiving criticism for lack of transparency in notifying the chain of command. The European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service, known as C3S, said on Tuesday that 2023 was the planet's hottest year on record by a substantial margin. The C3S confirmed that on average, the planet was 1.48 degrees Celsius warmer than the 19th century pre-industrial period before the start of modern-day carbon dioxide emissions. C3S Director Carla Bontempo also said 2023 is very likely to be the warmest year in the last 100,000 years. While the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit set by the Paris Agreement in 2015 has not yet been breached, the C3S said that the temperature recorded in 2023 sets a dire precedent. Kim Jongun, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Most of the wet clouds have moved away from the peninsula, but Jeju and the East Coast could see lingering wintry precipitation through this afternoon. It didn't snow as much as expected, but it was enough to cause roads to become icy and slippery with overnight freezing temperatures. So please stay safe on the road and walk with extra care. Afternoon highs are much higher for upper regions today, but readings are similar to lower in southern parts of Korea. Along with the rise in highs, ultrafine dust levels have gone up high again. The capital area, Chungcheongdo province, will be trapped in dusty air all day. The rest of the south will see dust levels boosting in the afternoon. Highs are 1 to 8 degrees higher than yesterday, so tops out at 5 degrees, Busan at 10 degrees Celsius. Skies will get sunnier in the afternoon. We can expect much calmer weather through Sunday. Then a mix of rain and snow is in the forecast in the west of central areas. Then bitter cold air moves in next Monday morning. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions. Right, and that ends Wednesday's afternoon newscast. Thank you for watching. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us.